Hi, I'm Mandi Feely Swain, and you are here on our podcast today for Origination Boost. And my guest today is Jimmy Farris.
Hello, Mandi. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to do this with you.
Yeah, so the fun part is usually I kind of have some background knowledge of my guests, and I have very little, so this will be a fun ride for both of us. You don't really know me, I don't really know you, so this giddy up, right? So
yes.
Your journey is fascinating, from small town Idaho to the NFL, now keynote speaker and coach. How did your early experiences shape your approach to success and performance?
How much time do we have on the podcast here today? Yeah, so I'll try to make this super short, as short as possible. So many things. I think my journey in sports, from starting when I was 8 years old at the Lewiston Boys and Girls Club, all the way to retiring at 31. I think those experiences shaped me into who I am. I mean, I know that's kind of cliche, but I am who I am because of playing the sport of football, the people that came into my life as a result of doing that, coaches, mentors, teammates, friends, have all shaped me immensely. And I think that one of the things that helped me pivot away from the NFL when I retired at 31 with no resume, no corporate work experience, no idea of what value I could add to the world, no idea of what I would even want that to be, wondering if I'd find the next mountain to climb, and simultaneously wondering if I had what it took to climb it. I went through a period where I felt like maybe playing football was the one thing I was going to be good at in life. I was like, maybe we all get like one thing that we can really excel at and really find success in, and maybe that was my thing. And now I'm just going to be an average guy doing average guy things for the rest of my life. And what happened when going through that identity crisis was that I remembered who I am at the core, and that person and all the habits and things that I'd built over the course of my career ultimately was who I am at my core, and that I could just apply that version of me to whatever the next thing was. And hopefully my hypothesis was that I could experience similar success if I applied the same blueprint. And that's what I found so far. My hypothesis has proven right so far. And so my mission now is to teach that blueprint to other people, and so they can apply their version of it, their unique version that they hone and tweak to fit them to whatever they're doing, and experience the success that they want to experience in life. So that's a very condensed version of A to B. And
so I want to rock and roll back, right? So Lewiston, for those that listening, wherever you are, is a small town. It's just south of Moscow, Idaho, where the University of Idaho is located. It's about, if you consider our state an L, I guess that's a backward on the thing, but an L, it's like midway point in the top of the L, right? So not quite northern Idaho, but not southern Idaho by any means, and a modest town, right? Blue collar workers, mostly good human beings that are just love their families. And so you start playing football at age 8 in the Boys and Girls Club. You obviously excelled at that, and then did you leave right out of high school, or how did that all progress for you?
Yeah, so the goal when I got to high school became to get a college scholarship. I really fell in love, became obsessed with the idea of getting a college scholarship so I was thinking to myself, still an amateur, like I'm not going to get paid to do this, but I was like, if I get my college paid for,
yeah,
to do something that I've been doing for free, that I really love, that I'm absolutely in love with, that would be a pretty good deal. And so that was the journey. It was sequentially, how do I become the best player that I can be? How can I translate that into becoming an all-state high school football player in Idaho, and hopefully have some team success and win a state championship? Ended up getting essentially one offer from the University of Montana, where I ended up going over in Missoula. And then the goal there became, it kind of started over, become the best player that I can be, which hopefully will lead to being all conference, all American, having team success. That happened. And then the goal became, let's try to go to the NFL and shoot our shot and see what happens there. And so it was this sequential process all the way through that always started with, hey, regardless of what anybody else is doing, the only thing you can control is you being the absolute best that you can be. And let anything else that happens be the byproduct of that pursuit. And so I learned that at a pretty young age. In my teens, I had a coach that was like, hey, the only thing you can do is work your butt off to be the best you can be and see what happens from there. And so I kind of took that approach, and that was that journey. Yeah, it was high school, college, and then ultimately to get to the pros.
So your passion for the game led you on this pursuit, it sounds, of greatness. And it sounds like that advice you got at a young age to control the controllables, right? That's all you can handle in your life. You can't get distracted by the other things, or you would lose focus of that passion. And it sounds like you didn't let the only getting one offer distract you or tell you weren't good enough to go to the NFL. I think sometimes people get, maybe they think, oh man, this is my dream, but then they get, one offer and they're like, wow, I thought I'd have more there. But you just took that opportunity and then said, I'm good enough. I'm, in your head, I think in the mindset of that, there's a lot to unpack there, because you didn't let any of that distract you. You said, this is what I want to do with my life. And so you did it. And I think that that's just fascinating.
Thank you. Yeah, look, in that business and with many businesses, it only takes one, right? All I needed was one college to think that I was good enough to play. All I needed was, I could only play on one team at a time. So, in college and in the pros, all I needed was one NFL team, one coach that thought that I was valuable enough to keep on their roster. And where that idea came from, that mindset came from, was not to compare. I could have looked at my one offer and said, man, this guy's got 5 or this other guy's got 10. And in keeping that mindset, like, all I can control is me being the best I can be and doing the best wherever I'm at, kept me focused on, I don't care what anybody else is doing. I'm not comparing myself to the success that somebody else is having in their journey. They've got a different background, different set of circumstances. I only need one opportunity. I got it, and let's go full throttle and take advantage of it.
Yeah, it sounds like you did. And if you played until you were 31 in the NFL, you had a long career, right? I mean, It wasn't like you were just a one and done, in and out.
Spanned 7 years, ups and downs, the whole thing. Had a few years in there where I was played a lot on offense, significant contributor. The other years played a lot of special teams, did the dirty work. Whatever it took to stick around. One of my coaches, one of my first coaches in the NFL, a guy named George Stewart, when I was with the 49ers, had this phrase where he said, the more you can do, the more you can do. And what he meant was, the more valuable you make yourself, the more skill sets you learn, the more things that you can do on the field, the more positions you can play, the more needs you can service, the more we're going to give you those opportunities. So it was kind of this feedback loop. The more you can do, the more you can do. And I stress that so much in life now. Everybody wants to talk, which I do, about mindset, but let's also talk about skill set, right? You have to build the skills, and building a wide array of skills, specializing in one area, but building a wide array of skills so that you can step in when somebody says, hey, we really need somebody that can maybe handle, you say, I got that. I can do that. Yeah. That was my calling card early on in the league. I learned every position that I could learn. And when they said, hey, can somebody jump in it? I was like, I'll do it. I can do it, And so, just another valuable lesson that's contributed to what I'm able to do today.
Well, and to equate that to my life, one of the most valuable lessons I learned early on in the mortgage space was I had an opportunity to, I was young, 19, and I went to work, and I was just working. And all I really cared about is how I was going to pay for college at Boise State. And I walked in and I thought I was going to get a raise. I was getting paid all of $10 an hour. And I thought I'd been doing such a great job. And I walked in and my boss said, well, we're going to have to do cutbacks. We're going to cut your hours. And I said, all of 19, 20 years old, you're the worst boss I've ever had in my whole life. I thought I was coming in here for a raise. And that day though, those hard things I think make you learn that. What I learned then is if I knew as much as I could and was willing to do like you did, raise my hand at every opportunity and learn as much as I could about the mortgage space, even in downturns, I would be valuable to the team. And so even though I've not played in the NFL, I think that'd be a kick in the pants because I love football so much. But for me in mortgage space, that lesson that day reminded me that if I learned a lot and was like you, willing to raise my hand and say yes to any opportunity thrown my way, I became a, Swiss Army knife, so to speak, in mortgage. And it sounds like you did the same thing in the NFL.
100%. And isn't, not to be cliche, but isn't that what life is about? The ability to adapt. Like rarely do we get to pick one path and stay in one narrow lane that never changes, that there's never a traffic jam, there's never construction on that path, there's never an accident up ahead that causes us to have to take a side street. The ability to be adaptable and stay flexible I think is the key to having the type of longevity that you've obviously had in the mortgage industry. The only way you can truly become adaptable is to hone a wide, vast skill set, which says, hey, I can pivot over here. I've got some skill set that can serve me. If I have to pivot, I've got the ability to then build on that foundational skill set that I have and maybe, reach that expert mastery level in a different lane, or taking that side street. So yeah, I love that story you told, because I think most people that you would talk to, probably people you've had on your podcast that have experienced high levels of success in one field or in multiple would tell you the same thing. It was my ability to adapt when things got a little bit dicey.
Yeah. And check your ego, right? I think 100%. Sometimes you're like, well, dude, I am very good at this. I mean, what, you want me to switch? I mean, right. I am good, right? I got myself to this party, not because I was a Swiss Army knife, but because I was really laser focused on this specific skill, right? But I think that, checking your ego at the door and being willing to be the team player, being willing to pick up whatever, sword that you had to fight for another day, I think is just sounds like what you did in your career,
Yes. So quick story on that, which I think is very apt. That same coach, George Stewart, my rookie year in San Francisco, after a really bad practice that I'd had early on in training camp, he essentially told me, look, you were a really good player in college, that your college career, the success you had in college is what got you here. What you need to understand is that what got you here won't keep you here. So if you're gonna have success here on this level, you got to check that ego. And the only focus is, regardless of how good I think I am, regardless of what past success I've had, I've got to go to another level and continue to learn and grow and try to be better. And I think that's a mistake, if I can say that a lot of people make, is thinking that, hey, my current skill set, look at the success that I've had. We get superstitious about our success and say, I've always done it this way. It's always worked. I've had success. When the mindset should be like, hey, I've had great success. I got to keep building on that, because again, I don't know when I might have to pivot. The market might change. The lane might change. The dynamics might change. I got to stay open to always consistently learning, growing, and trying to get better. And again, when you asked me at the outset, what did my football career teach me? There's another example of a lesson that, at 47, I'm still implementing today,
Yeah, well, I think good humans tend to want to be learners, right? I say learners are earners. And I think that's, and leveling up in your career and being able to say, I need help to learn more. I think after 22, people could trip out the front door and find a home loan in 20 and 21, right? Because everybody wanted a 2 or 3% interest rate. It wasn't hard to help people get what they needed. Then 22 happened and rates went up like 2%. And like, a month. And 46% of those in our business have left the industry, and that those that are in it are grinders, and I read a stat that if you closed 25 units last year, you were in the top 25% of loan officers. There's like 180,000 in the country, right? And I think that I wrote it down, to be adaptable is key to winning in whatever like you said, roadblocks are in your way. I think that was key. And for me, I had to go learn new ways to market, new ways to have conversations, new ways to have that, get over obstacles that people had with either, affordability or whatever it was. And it sounds like the NFL taught you that aspect as well, because you were like, okay, I got to level up. I mean, college versus, just like high school, right? The next level. College, you had to learn a whole new, level up the strength of your body, the strength of your mind, all those things. And then the NFL comes in and you're playing with the best of the best, right?
Yes,
they didn't get there because they sucked. They didn't get there just by luck. They got there because they're the best of the best. That's how that works.
Yes. And the reality of that is that you don't know what you don't know. Like there was no way going into the pros that I could have known what that was going to take to be successful on that level, because I'd never operated on that level.
Right.
So it took a couple coaches and players either saying directly or modeling what it took to have success on that level. And then young guys like myself at that time having the willingness to, the old Jim Rohn quote, success leaves clues, the willingness to look and say, okay, I'm not on this level. I'm not on their level. Let me grab some of those clues and try to implement some of those things into my game. I don't say, from an ego standpoint that I was humble enough to do that. I think I was just smart enough, or I should say not stupid enough to not pick up on all of those clues, right? And that's one of the things that I encourage anybody that I work with to do something similar. Hey, find a person that you either have personal access to, or somebody maybe on the internet you can listen to their podcast, read their book, that's doing what you're doing at a higher level than you. They probably know some things that you don't quite yet know. They understand some things that you don't quite yet understand. And just by modeling their actions and behaviors, or if you have direct access to them, asking them out for coffee and picking their brain, as they say, you might find some things that you can implement immediately tomorrow into your game to just get a little bit better.
Yeah, I love that so much. And it reminds me that when you went to the NFL, you used these nuggets of information to implement into your kind of game and how you did things. But you got there because of your raw skills, your honed in skills. All of these things made you unique to who you are. And I think for me, I digress a little bit, but I think it plays here. I competed for Miss Idaho USA 4 years in a row, and I felt like chasing the girl that from the year before. I was a runner-up 4 years in a row, and so that's kind of a grind to be told you're not good enough to take the title, right? And my dad would go, well, that's a expensive trophy, and but I was chasing the girl from the year before. And what I lost in that process is my authentic path, my, keeping my head down, elbows up, working, doing it my way. And that failure, and it wasn't a fail. Some girls would say placing in the, first runner up, second runner up, all those things. That's good. That's a win, right? I look at it for me as a personal failure, but I use that as a catalyst to realize in my life now that I need to still be authentic to myself, yes, right? I need to take the nuggets of information I receive from people I admire, look up to, like you said, mentors, coaches, whoever that is, take that, but do it my way. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people don't do it their way, and that's why they see failure. They try to copycat.
Yeah. So this is, if I may, this is a larger conversation about the idea of winning. I hear it's like nails on a chalkboard to me personally when I hear people say, man, I'm just trying to win at life, or I am winning at life, or so-and-so's winning at life. Because what does that even mean? Like there's no scoreboard. There's no clock that says the game starts at this time and it ends at this point in time. There's no referees. There's no agreed upon rules.
Right.
What does it mean to say you're winning at life? Because if having success in your business and you have a $5 million, $10 million net worth or $10 million business, and you say, I'm winning, I'll say, awesome. Here's my buddy over here that has $100 million net worth. Now you're getting your ass kicked. So
right.
Now you're losing. Right. And so
it's all relative.
It's all relative. Right. And I came out of competitive sports. You came out of competitive pageants where there was a defined winner and loser technically. And the problem is if we carry that into life after those competitions, right, you realize that there really is no winning and losing, and that the goal is to say, did I create the best version of me that I can create? How can I create the best business I can create, make the most money I can make, have the best relationships that I can have, regardless of what anybody else is doing? So it kind of circles back to that comparison idea. The old comparison is the thief of joy. It's cliche because it's so true. The only thing, Mandi, that you and I can do is create the best X that we can and right, find fulfillment and satisfaction in that. And the last thing I'll say on that is I've been in those positions too, where the goal was, hey, I want to be better than this person, because if I beat this guy out, then I get the job. Who knows if maybe that was aiming too low? Who knows if just trying to be better than that person robbed me of being the best I could be, which was infinitely better than that person. And so all that to say, competition, I don't subscribe to it. I'm into creation. I want to just try to create the best life, the best version of me, the best fill in the blank that I can. And that's how I live my life. Yeah,
it is an interesting thought of chasing the, the Joneses, so to speak, 100%. and finding if you're always looking at somebody else's life and wanting it, you probably are not fulfilling your best life. And I love that you say that, because I do think our failures help us become who we are and help us guide us, and finding gratitude in those failures is probably where I've found my biggest success, is because then you don't repeat I don't repeat those, because I'm grateful that I learned from that. Yes. And for you, what's been something that, it was a failure you're grateful for because it made you better, or it pivoted your life, or whatever?
Look, there's a lot of things to say on that. First of all, I again learned early in my football career that to reframe that idea of failure, that failure is just feedback, right? And that came from every single day during the season. We'd go out on the practice field and we'd practice, and then we'd come in 30 minutes after practice and watch the film of practice. And the coach would say, hey, this was good. This wasn't so good. We can work and get better here. This is what we want. This is up to our standard. So you're doing good here. Keep working to get better there. So it was like, and then when we lost a game, you come in and watch film, you say, hey, these are the things that we didn't do well that contributed to the loss. If we do these things better, we got a better chance to win. So that idea of failure being feedback, when I left football and embarked on an entrepreneurial journey and trying to find success in whatever that was going to be after football, it was in my mind, because I was still in that old paradigm of winning or losing, everything was a failure, because I wasn't having success on the level that I was as a pro football player. And so again, the pivot just became, if I can take these perceived failures and say, well, where did I fall short? What did I not see? What part of that did I miss? What I learned was that I'm expecting the same level of success that I had in my previous career when I'm not minding the attention to details the way that I used to. I'm not putting in the same effort. I'm not as disciplined. I'm not as committed. I'm not as obsessed with this as I was then. How can I expect the same level of success? And so that keeping failure reframed in that idea that it's just feedback and it's all learning was what got me over the hump to say, okay, then I need to keep trying, because every time I go out and fail, I'm getting more feedback, and ultimately I'm going to keep refining and honing, and I'm going to get this thing right, and I'm going to figure this out. And that's exactly what happened. And so I guess the pivotal moment for me was leaning into failure and saying, as silly as it sounds, like the more I fail, the more answers I'm going to get as to how to do it correctly and how to find
do
success.
it better. Yeah,
yes.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of folks that maybe are coming into the mortgage space right now, they feel that way, that they feel like you maybe did coming out, maybe whatever career the folks have been in, and then they pivot and they're now going to go into becoming a mortgage loan officer. They maybe feel the way you felt, right? They just feel like the first year is just like this flood of information, And so at 31, you've had this great success in the NFL. Your almost identity is defined by that journey. Everybody knows you. You're famous in your town. You can't go to the grocery store without like, hey, Jimmy, right? I mean, all the things, right? I mean, Lewiston's a small town, so I'm sure they made you made them very proud by the success you had, and it was cool. Now you feel this kind of crazy pressure to be great at whatever's next, right? And so what was that like for you?
It was tough, because anything less than that was, back to the failure idea, was a failure in my mind. And the mistake that I made was early on, I let that keep me from looking dumb, which is such an important point of ultimately finding success. If you're willing to understand that when you start something new, you're going to be bad at it, likely, and you're probably going to look silly and look bad for a period of time before you develop the skill set and get the understanding of how to have success in this new thing. I was so scared of looking silly. I wanted everybody to think I had it all together. I had this curated image that, hey man, everything's good. Like, I won a Super Bowl, I'm successful, I can do anything. And because I wanted to maintain that image, there was a lot of things that I was really interested in that I didn't even try, because I was like, there's going to be a period of time where I'm going to look inadequate, I'm going to look inept, incompetent, and I don't want to show the world that. So we're not going to do that. Let me try to stay in a certain lane where everything's good. And so I think that pressure and the identity piece that you talked about were a couple things in my life that really, because I hadn't figured out how to navigate that, took me 2 or 3 years longer than it should have to really pivot and get to the next thing, because I was still battling with that.
Yeah, I think that I just find it fascinating. Our buddy Ryan Harris, he's been on my podcast. He's a good friend of mine, and he played for Denver Broncos. And he said, maybe it was a little bit like, what the biscuit am I going to do? Right? You're so defined by this career. And I guess if I left mortgage, I'd be like, okay, what's next? And I think that it would be odd, because 30 years in the mortgage space, I'd be like, I don't know if I know how to do anything else. So I can respect that and the love of a game. And I think that the thing is different is at 8 years old, when you were playing, you weren't thinking about that as a child, right? A child's mindset is like, you're out there just having a great time and playing ball and learning skills and all those things. And you're not scared and to feel judgment by others. But as adults, I think we get there where we're like, dude, I feel judged. And I think sometimes that stops us from greatness. At first, when I was on social media and I would record my videos for social media, I just couldn't watch them. I'm like, okay, I'm doing this, but I am not watching them, because I'm judging myself, right? And I think that we sometimes are our own biggest critic. And we need to change that into being our biggest cheerleaders. Would you not agree?
Oh, I think there's so much value in what you just said. Because again, there's that period of time where anything new that we start, you're going to be bad at. And one of the pivots for me was really believing, really understanding that nobody's really that concerned with what I'm doing. It's really easy to get,
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, like we get this heightened sense of ourselves And at the end of the day, it's like, dude, nobody cares they got their own problems. They're trying to figure out how to have success in their lives. They're not watching my video and saying, look at this fool. They don't care because they're struggling with their own stuff. And so that really helped me get out of my own way, because for a long time I did have this exaggerated sense of self that I thought everybody would critique everything that I was doing, and they didn't care, and once I realized that, it freed me to go pursue what I loved, what I wanted to do it the way I wanted to do it, to put myself out there, kind of unshackled me, so to speak. And, and it took a while to get to that point, you can know that consciously and tell yourself that. It's another thing to actually finally get to the point where you believe that and you feel that deep in your soul.
It's quite freeing.
Yes.
Quite freeing. My husband would say to me, and I hated it for so long, he'd say, Mandi, others people's opinion of you is none of your business. And I thought, I hate when you say that, because it is my business. It's about me. And he's like, yes, it is not about you. Ignore, put blinders up to that. And it's quite freeing when you go, cool, I'm doing me. And that's when I found that I really started to succeed, is when I cared about the people that cared about me, and I take that input and I want to be better. But the people that are not in my direct tribe or space, that's your opinion of me and that's your business, not mine.
I love that you said this, because I want to make this point. I think it's important. I've used this phrase in the past that everybody's entitled to an opinion, not everybody's qualified. And what I mean when I say that is, you can have an opinion about me, but unless you're somebody in my circle that knows my journey, or that knows the industry and the lane in which we're in, you're probably not qualified to speak on what I'm doing. And that really came from, people asking all the time, hey, do you get bothered by what fans say? And it's not really, because ultimately most fans are not qualified to speak on a high level about what's happening during an NFL game.
Right.
They don't understand the scheme. They don't understand the assignment. They don't understand the nuance that went into why I did what I did, or why something didn't happen on a given play. And so when people get caught up in that idea of other people's opinions, it's it's not that it doesn't matter what anybody thinks about you, because there should be a group of, a brain trust that all of us have, so to speak, of 5, 8, 10 people, that it really does matter what those people think of us, because they're qualified to speak in our lives, because they're important people in our lives, and their feedback we should value. Everybody else, I think of it as the fan that's up in, section 302, that's got binoculars trying to look down on the field, that's saying, man, Farris sucks. Yeah, they're not qualified to speak on what I'm doing.
Well, yeah, until you put those pads on, which I never have, but I love the game. And I think that your scoreboard analogy is so true, or like me, there is a final result in pageantry, right? I kind of came out of that environment thinking that there was some kind of scoreboard, and there's not in life. I love the game. That's why we love the game of football. There is a scoreboard, there is a time, there is a clock, there is a countdown. And in our life, all we have is the 100 years that God gave us, and to be the very best versions of ourselves. And I think that the thing I love to hear from you is that you're continually learning, right? So tell us what position you played in the NFL, and then also now what you're doing in your career.
So I played wide receiver in the NFL. In high school, I played both sides of the ball. I thought going into college that I wanted to play on defense. I thought I was going to be the next all-pro safety. And I realized pretty quickly that wasn't my mentality. Offense and defense, those people have different mentalities. They're two kind of different mindsets. And so when I got to college, really just leaned into the receiver position, and obviously played that throughout the course of my NFL career, as well as all the special team stuff, covering kickoffs, covering punts, punt return, kickoff return, the dirty work, as we used to call it. Now I've pivoted to kind of, it's the speaker, coach, presenter industry, which is a very, very broad lane. For me, it's really down to coaching, leadership development, and keynote speaking around high performance. I developed a program that we talked about, kind of the nuts and bolts of it earlier. The mindset of an elite level athlete, the habits, practices, principles of that mindset, how you can apply that to your business to find success. Because as you know, Mandi, from the pageant world, the high performance principles, if you will, they're all the same across the board, right? The same discipline for me as a pro football player is the same discipline for you as a lender that has to get up every morning and make those calls and make your update calls and do the work. It's just applied differently. Yeah. So that's really my lane. I like to speak to audiences about how they can, again, regardless of what anybody else is doing, how they can be the best versions of them and create the best business and the most success that they can create. And then I like to work individually with small teams, typically people in leadership or management level positions, on how they can be the best leader manager they can be, and how that translates to building the people that are in their charge to be the best that they can be. So it's, I like that because it's that positive feedback loop that when you're in leadership, when you're in management, you being a better leader gives you the capacity to help your people be better. And that old cliche that the quickest way to get what you want is to help someone else get what they want. If the goal in leadership, if your stated purpose in leadership is to help your people ultimately take your job and ascend to the highest levels they can, it only elevates you as a leader. And so that's kind of the foundation of my leadership development program.
I love that. And tell me a leader in your life or your career that has really shown that what you really believe is the pinnacle of leadership. Somebody that you met along the way.
So my head coach in Washington was a guy named Joe Gibbs, who is in the NFL Hall of Fame. He's also in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. He won 3 Super Bowls in the 90s with the Redskins, stepped away from pro football, built a NASCAR team, Joe Gibbs Racing, won multiple championships in NASCAR in Joe Gibbs Racing, came back to the NFL to coach the Redskins at the time, now Commanders. And I had the unbelievable good fortune to play for him in Washington for 3 seasons. What Coach Gibbs taught me about leadership was the importance of the human connection, the importance of building influence as a leader, which I think is the top trait or characteristic of any leader. If you Google traits of top leaders, you'll see authenticity, accountability, vision, all these things. And what I rarely see is influence. And I think influence is at the top of the food chain. In other words, having the ability to rally a group of people around you as the leader to the degree when you say, hey, we got to go in this direction. Everybody says, I'm with you because I trust you. I know you care about me. You love me. You have my best interests at heart. And that's what Joe Gibbs was able to do. That old saying that I hear so many of the leaders I work with, they say, man, I want my people to run through a wall for me. They have to know that you would do the same for them.
Right. I agree.
And that's what Joe Gibbs was able to cultivate with our team. And probably my biggest takeaway from him was when people feel seen, heard, valued, loved, cared for, respected, they reciprocate that. And as a leader, you have to lead with that before you can expect that from others. And that's what he gave: full trust, full respect, cared, listened, and treated each individual uniquely according to who they were and connected with each individual. I think those are some of the most important traits of leaders, particularly in 2025 and beyond. The old my way or the highway, this is how we do things, this is our culture, either get with it or get out. It's outdated, it's antiquated, and it doesn't work, quite frankly, in this new era of business. And 20 years ago, Joe Gibbs had that figured out. And he, who he was and who he is as a human is so much of that is the foundation of what I try to impart to the leaders that I work with in my program.
I love that. And it shows that his leadership crossed different industries, right? I mean, NFL versus NASCAR, different industries, but he led both to success. And so I think that the leaders I respect are those that do see value in the player and then help elevate the player, whatever business you're in, right? And I always look at the team here at Premier Mortgage Resources. We're the team that's playing against all the other teams on the field. And if we can give all of the information we can to our team so they can be the best versions of themselves, that as a team we will win and push forward. And it sounds like that's what happened in your career.
You know, the question that so many people have probably been asked, what's your definition of leadership, right? And you ask 100 people, you'll get 100 different answers. Those experiences with guys like Joe Gibbs. I had another great head coach with the Atlanta Falcons, a guy named Dan Reeves, who is also in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Bill Belichick, also in the Pro Football, or will be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Those experiences formed my definition of leadership, which is to help others do better work than they could ever do alone. And that's what you just expressed there, which is because they came in contact with me, they're better. And I've created a situation as a leader where you want to be able to say, you've got a group of people that 10, 15, 20 years down the road, when someone asks them, hey, how'd you get to where you got to? They say, man, 15 years ago, I worked for this lady named Mandi at Premier Mortgage. And if it wasn't for her and the way she poured into me and the way she led me and the way she built me up and encouraged me and supported me and helped me be the best version of me, I don't know if I'd be sitting where I'm sitting today. I don't know if I'd have the success. That's the legacy of a true leader, of an owner, operator of a business, when you can help other people do better work because they came in contact with you than they would have done otherwise. And I think that's what you express, and that's beautiful. I love that that's kind of the culture that you're building there.
Well, and it sounds to me like, I've heard this question before. Are you a information keeper? Or are you an information sharer? And it sounds like, that's what I hear you saying. Some leaders are like, nope, this is my information. This is how we're doing it. And they're very rigid and they've succeeded at their business at that, but they've not seen their ultimate success because they haven't been a information sharer, right?
Yes.
And grower of others. And I think that, you probably saw both sides of the coaching spectrum. Yes. Of information sharers or information keepers in your career, right? I mean, would that be true?
Absolutely. I think there's, again, kind of going back to the ego thing, there's a lot of people, particularly look at the history of corporate America. I mean, let's just take it back there. Some of these CEOs that books were written about, they had great success, but when really pressed on their legacy, people that worked for them would say, super smart person, had a lot of success, but wanted to make sure everybody knew it was because of him or her. The difference, again, that I think is so beautiful about pro sports was that every head coach that I played for knew if my players aren't playing at the very highest level they can play, then I don't have the success that I want to have, because the players are the ones out on the field putting points on the board, getting the results, driving the numbers, as we say in business. It's not my job as a leader to score touchdowns. My job is to make sure that the guys out on the field scoring the touchdowns are loved, supported, cared for, have all the resources, have the knowledge. And that's the difference, is the mindset of saying, my success as a leader is going to come through me building and growing my people, who are the ones that drive the numbers and produce the results. That's my goal, my aim with anybody that I work with is that paradigm shift. Like, hey man, because I always say, in those years that I played for Joe Gibbs, Dan Reeves, and Bill Belichick, never one time saw any of those three score a touchdown, make a tackle, make a block, kick a field goal. It wasn't their job. That was our job. Their job was to make sure that we were able to do that at the highest possible level because of what they'd poured into us. And I think that's a pivot, and I think it's valuable.
Yeah, I love that. So I watch sidelines sometimes, and I think sometimes the game is won based on the sideline, because you can see the energy of a sideline, right? And sometimes one person on a team can change that dynamic, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the coach. It can be another player. How did you keep your head straight when you felt like the energy next to you was not where you needed to have it? I mean, I think that because I can watch games, I love the game of football. It's my favorite, and but I watch sidelines, and I can watch the underdog win because their sideline, the energy is off the charts. They feel positive. They feel like they're cheering for their team, even on, the times that are not as awesome. And then on the other side, you see this team that should be winning, and you can feel just the energy drain. I mean, even watching it on TV, you can feel it.
Yes.
I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, totally agree. I think what you're seeing was built days ago, weeks ago, and months ago. And what I mean by that is energy, enthusiasm, and all of that in the moment is great, but ultimately it falls short if the preparation beforehand wasn't adequate to match that moment. And so what you're seeing when you're seeing that happening in real time is a group of people that are like, we put in the work, we're prepared. There's no reason why we shouldn't be having success in this moment. These guys didn't work harder than us. They're not more prepared than us. We're capable of executing at the same level that they are. In order to say that and really believe that and have that permeate throughout an entire team, the collective consciousness has to be that, hey, we earned this. We've put in the work. We've prepared to the level that's necessary. Because Mandi, you've probably experienced this. There's times when we try to hype ourselves up, and in the back of our mind, we're like, I didn't put in the work. I didn't really do what was required to have success in this moment. Let's hope that I can find it. But if I don't, I can't be mad because I know I didn't put in the work.
I didn't do the homework to get to the test. I think I think that applies to mortgage really well, because I meet a lot of producers and they're like, hey, Mandi, I want this. And I'm like, okay, that all comes with the dirty. That all comes with the dirty work of the daily that equals this kind of, whether it's the Super Bowl ring at the end, that all came with the dirty work. That all came with the ice baths. That all came with the powering through. That came showing up when you didn't want to. That when getting out of your head when you had personal stuff, and continuing to do the dirty work day in and day out. And so I love that you brought that up, because I think that sometimes we love to see the glory of whatever happens. We want to celebrate the win, but those wins for most successful people, in my opinion, came because they did all the dirty work every single day.
100%. And you see it. Sports is such a visual display of that we get to see on a week-to-week basis. I'll hear people casually say things like, oh man, such and such team, they won the game on that last drive. They won the game on that last defensive stop. I understand what they mean. The reality is they won the game 6 months ago in the summer when they were out in the 100-degree heat and 80% humidity running sprints and getting the work in together. They won the game during training camp when everybody was dragging and misery loved company and everybody was like, this sucks, but we got to push through. If you're going to have real confidence in the moment that you can achieve the goal that you're saying you want, it comes from the work you did 6 months ago. And so I love that point that you're making. And it kind of goes back to something you talked about earlier when you were talking about, if I can say, I'm not in the mortgage industry, so I say this with caution. It was easy in 2020, 2021. Like I was coaching loan officers at the time. You talked about doing 25 files a year that did 25, 30 a month.
Yeah.
With purchase and refi volume combined. It was like, and what happened is because it was so easy, the muscles atrophied in terms of the real blocking and tackling that has to be done to actually get a lead to get it under contract and to get it closed in today's world, or back in 2018, 2019, people don't want to do that work. And it, for some of those people, all of that winning gave them a sense of, hey, I can do this. I'm good at this. I know what I'm doing, and shit, this is easy. And then when it got tough, they didn't have they weren't conditioned to do what it actually took. And, you know, I always use the analogy again that sports taught me. Sometimes you can be winning a lot of games and not playing that well. I played on teams where that happened. We were not playing good football, but the other team turned the ball over and we just kept winning. There was other times, Mandi, where we weren't winning, but we were playing really, really well. And we just needed to stay the course and keep doing what we were doing and tighten up a little bit, pay a little more attention to the details. And then the wins started to come. I think it's a great analogy for your business.
Yeah.
Just because you're not seeing the success in the moment doesn't mean you're not doing the right stuff.
Right. Absolutely.
And the flip side is, just because you're having some success right now doesn't mean that you got it all together. It's going to continue. Yes. You know.
So yes, don't get distracted by I think this is a great way to close. Don't get distracted by the win. Do the dirty work that makes the difference. Pivot or tweak as you go along so that you can make the changes you need to make, but stay focused with your eye on the prize. Be passionate about whatever you're doing in your life. And Jimmy, you are a great example of that. And it's been my honor to get to know you, a fellow Idahoan, which I'm born and raised here. I'm going to be cheering for you. And now I'm going to go watch some film and find Jimmy Farris on. And plus my son Blake loves the 49ers. So you spoke all the right words to me today.
Listen, thank you so much for that. I will just tell you that I'm old enough to have played in an era before YouTube and social media. So there's not a ton out there of highlights of me. There's not a ton. If it's out there, I probably put it out there somewhere, but it's not like it wasn't like it is today where everything was filmed. And so good luck finding any Jimmy Farris highlights.
Awesome. Well, thank you, my friend, for joining Origination Boost and helping loan officers across the country. You are a fantastic human, and I'm glad to know you.
Thank you so much, Mandi. Likewise, I appreciate you.
Thank you.